Hi, Steve Stolberg here with monthly painting video number 78, made in Kuala Lumpur, June 2020. This month is Dejah Thoris. I'm not sure how you pronounce that. Thoris, fighting an ice worm, but it didn't start out with that character. Here you can see it started with a different idea, with different characters. This is an orc mother, and she has a little baby, and the monster has taken the baby, and she's fighting the orc monster, and she's got stuck through the leg. And as you can see, I was thinking about making this a statue with a base. I In what I'm going to show you, the finished version of this image is not going to have this lower part of the base, but it is going to have this rock here. Let me start this playback, and the next version is colored. I think it's basically the same. I added a shield here at the bottom, colored and lighted and all that shaded. Um, Basically the same monster. But then I did another version. Well, I'm not very happy with this, so I tried a different monster. He's got mouths all over his face. I don't know. Yeah, and then I tried a third monster. Still not happy with it. And then I think I started thinking about her in different terms as Dejah Thoris, but I removed the baby in the next iteration. Here you can see this is the final sketch that I started painting with here, and the thing about this is if you're gonna make it a statue, you can't have pieces floating in midair like a drop of blood over here, for instance. So all the blood has to be one single piece, or stick to something like either the worm's body or her body or something for support. And I'm kind of proud how intertwined these two are. Like there are no fragile bits that stick out except her hair a little bit, but that could always be changed in 3D. If I was to make this into a statue, that could always be changed. The hair could be sticking to her body or whatever. But I kind of like how the foot is touching the worm, and her sword and her hand is touching the worm here indirectly, and several points of attachment to the rock here, her leg, the hand, and the blood from the worm is connected both to the worm and her like this. So yeah, you'll see when it's finished. But yeah, I thought that was uh, a bit of thinking ahead on my part, thinking about it as a statue. And I just want to mention that so it explains to you why I don't have any loose drops flying around or any loose bit of worm flesh flying around. As you can see here, I started flatting in the flat colors and started shading her flat color, the red. I don't know if you read the stories of Barsoom, the books of Barsoom by Edgar Rice Burroughs, where Dejah Thoris is a Martian princess. She is of the red Martian type, so she has red skin. You may have seen the movie. I don't know, the movie didn't really capture the redness very well, and also her partial nudity, actually total nudity. In the book, she's described as being completely nude except for jewelry. So, you know, I covered up some bits, but there'll be another version as usual where she will be fully nude, which you can, if you get the Photoshop file, you can check that out for yourself. Here I'm flatting in the colors for the worm, the rock, the blood. I thought an ice worm might have green blood, you know, just to also to contrast to her red skin, make a nice contrast. I imagine her jewelry mostly gold. Um, that's what traditionally people depict her as. I think it's mentioned in the book too. I don't think silver or copper would look very good, so yeah, gold it is. The ice worm, I'm trying to make it look a bit icy, so it'll be sort of whitish, light colored anyway, I imagine. Maybe with a bluish tint, which I'll get more into the bluish tint later on, but for now it's kind of bluish gray, but you get the picture. And you'll see me later moving the head of the worm closer to her. That's to get that's because I figured out that her lower leg was too long. You'll see that later. We'll get into that later. And but for now, I'm just sort of adding a quick layer of texture on the worm. Very rough texture. Everything is very rough at the moment, as you can see. The sword, you can see it's off. It's not in the place where it's gonna. Even this version here, which is already moving but I'm gonna move it again later. Everything is moving around, but she's kind of cleaving the worm's head in two with her sword there. So he's got a splitting headache. Um, Everything is green inside of him as well. So just like it would be, I imagine, if an earth animal was suddenly cut in two by some sharp utensil. But I'm going to change the blood outline. The outline of the blood is going to change. This is just also again a very rough sketch, so I'll be going over all the outlines with a new drawing later. So actually, all the outlines are going to change slightly, become more, sophisticated, more exact, more precise. And you might have missed it also. I missed it, but her arm was initially behind the leg in the sketch, and so I chose to put it in front of the leg. Things like that you change as you go along. As for the lighting, you can see it's side lighting, strong directional side lighting, which is a way of making drama, creating drama. And then, as opposed to that, then what we usually do is we have something contrasty coming, softer but contrasting color of light coming from the opposite direction, so you can see the slightly cooler light coming from over here. Bit of background. And I'm going to show you the settings for the brush that I'm going to use here. This is the brush that I'm going to use for the outline. Very simple settings. Only these three parameters have been ticked. And you can see here what the settings are for those three parameters. And then lazy Nezumi, massive smoothing switched on, just to get as smooth as possible on the outlines. But partly because I have a problem with my old Wacom. I think it's not digitizing very well. I get kind of bumpy lines if I. Also, you can see I'm zoomed in at 100% right here. So if I zoom out to 66.7% or 50 or anything less than 100, I certainly risk, even at 100 I do, but certainly at lower percentages I do get very bumpy lines. And I think that's the digitizing of my Wacom doing that. I've tried different things to get rid of it, but what I'm doing right here, right now, zooming in and using the lazy Nezumi, that seems to work the best. And if I'm careful, sometimes you can see it, sometimes you don't. But yeah, I saw one there. I just saw one, but I undid it and did a new one. This is using reference, of course, for how she's holding her saber. And of course, I just Googled, hand holding saber. It's all available online. It's moving things into position like this. Obviously, you can tell I'm working on a completely new transparent layer here for the outlines. And of course, later you can, for the red skin part, you can make the outlines reddish, and for the which I will do right at the end. I do that. And for the green blood, you can make the outlines greenish, And for the gold, kind of dark dark brownish, that whole thing. You just follow the local color of the item that's being outlined. About the Martian books, most of them are actually in the public domain. So this isn't actually one of those somewhat illegal fan arts that people do sometimes. It's perfectly legal, I think, to do any of these characters from these books. Like Tarzan. Tarzan is also his invention. I'm trying to vary the line with, you try to do the outside lines thicker and the inside lines thinner. Like here, for instance, a very thin line here, a very thick line here. Also, the underside of any object, the shadowy underside of any object can be thicker than any other part. Also, of course, things that you want to draw attention to, like, you want them to stand out and pop out, eyebrows and eyelashes, stuff like that. You can make them very thick and very dark. Here, thicker here because it's an outside edge. Now, her right leg, as I said, it's her right lower leg, as I said, is too long. So let's see. I think I'm gonna get to. I guess it comes after the face of the worm. I'll jump ahead a little bit. I put some teeth in there. And some spines on the dagger-like shapes. The pincers. More teeth. Sort of like a snapping turtle. I don't know if you've seen what those guys look like inside, but their tongues, they have these. They're not teeth, but they are protuberances that sort of point backwards, inwards, so that stuff that they try to swallow just cannot escape, cannot make its way out. And the shapes on the head, everything has been split in two, so I have to add like double. So here, yeah, here you can see. I'm going to check it to make sure that I'm right, and I am. I'm copying the length of that leg, putting it over the other leg, and you can see it's several inches too long. So what I'm going to do is, and you can see I'm also going to adjust the curve of the worm in two places. And so what you can see, yeah, first I move the red thing so I have something to aim for. That's where I'm going to aim. That's where her ankle should be. And then I'm going to pick the whole upper half of the worm and her foot and rotate it. Yeah, here I'm just sketching roughly where I want the worm to end up. I've got something to aim for. And of course, I'm not picking the colored parts because they all have to be refined anyway later. So I'm just picking the line drawing, the part on these parts on the line drawing layer that I've done. And rotate. Move the hinge down there and overdo it first just so you can tune the position. Overdo it, go back, overdo it, go back, and try to find the perfect place in between. Here I'm just gonna pull this part out a little bit to make it fit, because otherwise you need a gentle curve. You need a flowing curve. The flow wasn't there, so there was like a corner here, like it came up a bit too straight. There was a corner, a sudden turn, and then a bit too straight after. So you got to shape curves like this so that they flow smoothly and gently all the way through. Can't have any sudden discontinuities anywhere. The tail, I can't describe why I wanted to move that. I just felt that it needed to be a bit thicker right there, and I wanted to change that curve a little bit. Now I'm starting on the blood. So first I'm just sort of sketching in the flow, the directionality of this of the flow that's gonna, like, logical. It needs to be logical, right? As it comes out of the worm. But there are two forces happening here. There's her sword passing through and pulling blood with it, but there's also the movement of the worm, which in this case may be negligible because he's not moving that much. He's just really surprised and dead. But the blood pressure inside the worm pushing the blood out. So, and gravity, of course. So gravity pulling down, but I, I don't want the blood to just go straight down. That's kind of boring and is also not logical. There's this swooshing thing happening here. So whatever. Maybe I got it wrong, but if you do it like this, parallel curves that are sort of slightly changing as you go along. It's not the same curve all the way. It's a slight difference to the curviness here, and that usually looks better. It usually looks nicer, more aesthetically pleasing than just having everything parallel. It's the same with wrinkles in cloth. It's the same with a lot of chaotic things like hair, snake tentacles. And anytime you have repetition, if you have too much repetition, it's instantly going to look artificial and bad. You want the repetition to change with each beat. Like not clonk, 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 but you want to like clonk, 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 a little bit of change like that. A little bit of modulation. Anyway, here's nearly done with the blood here. And by the way, I put these things on separate layers. I put the lines for the blood on one layer, the lines for her on one layer, the lines for the gold on one layer, the lines for the worm on one layer. And now I'm going to fill it all in. You see, I closed off temporarily this part here so that I could use the magic wand to pick in one single action or a couple of actions. Yeah, like that, and then fill it. Now this is, some editing there. And some editing and tweaking necessary, but now I have one big silhouette, and so I'm going to split this silhouette up into pieces again on separate layers, one for her, one for the worm, one for the blood, and I think one for the gold, etc. One for the cliff, maybe, the rock. When I'm done with the tweaking, the cleanup, you can call this. So this goes underneath the line layer, as you can see. You can see here on the edge here, blood ink, gold ink, ink. That's her ink. Layer 1 is just the white layer, which I will delete later. Sword, blood, gold, hair, cloth, skin. They're all on their own layer like that. And as I mentioned before many times, I don't like using mask layers and other. I just use this one single type of layer like this. It makes mistakes less likely. It makes me, I'm able to work faster this way. Adjustment layers, I hate those. Like imagine if you had 10 adjustment layers for her skin right here, and then you had to do this. Because what I'm doing here is I'm just merging her with the filled out version of the mask that I just made, and then deleting all the parts of her that go outside the mask, and now I'm going to extend all the parts of her that are inside the mask, just so we don't have any black lines, because these black lines here are just accidental. It's just because I chose black for the color of the mask. I could have chosen any color. It was just black is just nice and visible, so I can tell where I have to hide it. So here I'm just sort of I'm smudging her color out towards the edge to hide the black. And some mistakes, but some cleanup will be necessary. But this is basically what happens here is I'm fitting it perfectly to the line drawing which I've made. That's why I didn't clean up this paint until now. This paint is quite rough. It's fine. Leave it like this until I had the lines down, and so I could adjust the paint to fit the lines. I know most of the time people do the lines first and then paint, and then it doesn't matter. This is not taking a lot of extra time. It just takes a few minutes longer, and I think having the painting there helped me as I was drawing the lines. Just helped me to see where the line should be, helped me to draw better. And I did the same thing to all the others, the worm, the gold. It's very easy when you have when it's a very rough painting, it doesn't matter if your smudging is rough and basic. So it's very quick. And there is some gold on the leg that I missed out doing before. Both legs actually. And the rock is too small. Definitely. So I extend it downwards, I extend it back a bit. I don't know. It just looked like looked too convenient, like it was a little chair there for her to sit on and fight the worm. Um, and actually the rock was much bigger in the beginning. If you remember the initial sketches, here I'm darkening the rock a bit. It was much bigger. So I'm going to get some reference for the rock, and then I'm just going to detail it. Basically, I'm happy with the color here. And now I'm just detailing it using the same colors, just going in and doing finer detail. It's kind of boring to watch as well, but you could Google Martian rocks, or you can Google just what I did here. I think I Googled amazing rocks or impressive rock formations or something like that. You get a lot of nice things that you can use. And a bit of adjusting, a bit of cooler light to the rock that's in the shadow there. Plus a bit of really warm light that's bouncing up from the ground. Now I'm refining her. Now I copied her on a layer because I wanted to keep this also on one layer. Have it in reserve, so to speak, because I kind of like it. And then but in this case, after I refined everything fully, and this is what usually happens, I kind of like the refinement better than the original, so I went fully with the refinement. But what I could have done if I didn't like it was I could have erased parts of the refinement and showing the layer underneath, or just reducing opacity on the whole layer so that some of those old brushstrokes come through. And I still have this layer in the PSD, so if you want to try that yourselves, you feel free to do that. And you can see a lot of accidental stuff that's happened on the blood here, because when I just cut off the old blood, I cut off the old basic rough blood that I did using my new drawing as a cookie cutter. Yeah, it kind of I got a lot of funky shading just for free, by accident. And you'll see in the end, I'm not going to change the blood that much more after this. I'm just going to do some minor tweaks to this, and because I like it like this. It looks cool. Added some blood dripping on her here as well. There's a line on her cheek there. I'm going to remove that soon. It's really bothering me. Now that I see it again after removing it, now I'm looking at this playback. It's really bothering me. I feel like I want to reach into the recording and remove that line immediately. But anyway, nearly done now. Working on the above the belly button, working up the abdomen, lower abdomen. Yeah, let's see. What am I doing now? Detailing different places. The worm, the blood. It's jumping around here and there. I think I'm doing the blood now. Yep. So I'm just adding a bit of a highlight color and just yeah, you see how that works. I mean, I didn't plan for this dark part to be right there, you know. That's but it's kind of cool now that after seeing it there, I want to keep it there. What I did do was I just made sure that there's shadow up here, that the blood is shaded, similar to this, but this one is too dark. Actually, I lightened this one up a little bit. You'll see that in the final view. This shadow is too dark. I'm adding some detail to his internal structure here. And yeah, that's it. That's the finished one. It is done, and I think the only things are that I added a bit more blue here, like I mentioned I would, and a bit more sunshine on the sandy ground here, and I added the lines around these droplets here, and as I mentioned, I made all the lines take on the local color of whatever they're depicting. So here, this line became reddish, this line became greenish, etc. This line is slightly bluish, and so on. And I tried to lighten her hair a bit also. Oh, now it's starting over again. Well, anyway, that's it. Thanks for your support and see you next month.